Blockchain is the biggest way that we can, as a group of people, usurp corrupt governments, politicians, corporations, and larger cabals that operate the world.
Is he dead?
10K is coming. I think that everyone who's fudding it is going to be proven wrong.
People were calling Solana completely dead at $8, which was like a year and a half ago or something, and now Solana's won.
No single chain will be able to hold all of the world's activity. We believe that.
You want to talk us through that Bankless drama a little bit?
The story there is all kind of on Twitter, but
why did you choose this kind of strategy around brand?
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Like, you need a team. You need people to help you.
What's like the long-term vision for the rollup?
So that's our like next step is to.
Awesome to sit down with a blockchain legend here today. G Modular, G Onchain. What's the story these days?
I don't know what it is these days. I'm just going with the clean GMs with a period nowadays.
All right.
Thanks for having me though. It's going to be on the other side of the mic. We did a lot of podcasts in this room here this week. It's been fun.
Yeah. So we're at ETH Denver. I guess, is ETH dead? What
Dude,
are the
I
thoughts?
tweeted today. I was like, ETH Denver would be so much more lit if ETH was at 5K.
I saw that.
And then Ansem like quote tweeted and was like, dude, we should just do ETH Tribeca or something. I was like, man. Yeah, I mean, look, ETH is going through a little bit of finding its own soul. I did a really good podcast with Kane, and we talked about how like the difference in where the Solana social layer is versus where the Ethereum social layer is, and we can kind of get into it. But Ethereum's kind of gone from being the underdog to Bitcoin like in 2018, 2020, and then like DeFi summer, Ethereum did well, and then it kind of won, right? It was like the dominant smart contract platform. But now it's like in this like complacent, like we can't lose like setup. But you've got like Solana, Celestia, Sui, Aptos. You got like a lot of winners coming up that are like challenging it. So it's kind of now trying to find its soul and like find out like its identity again.
Yeah, I feel the very same way. Like ETH was so successful that they thought they could kind of like take their foot off the gas and
Everyone
kind of
got
like
rich.
enshrine to some extent, but now it's like they need to go back into startup mode.
Yeah, like there's a sense of urgency that I think is the core theme of this week and of the Ethereum community right now. Prices, like the good news is price is still like very high for a lot of the early adopters compared to where they entered. So everyone's still like feeling really good. But yeah, without a doubt, Solana has applied a lot of pressure. And they have a way different culture. So ETH's not dead. Long live ETH. But yeah, I mean, I think we see it turn around, but I think it's going to be kind of a slow couple weeks, months here for ETH.
Well, even in your brand, right? Like you've pivoted a little bit. I mean, I think you used to be a little more ETH centric and now have kind of embraced the broader world. So it's like, you know, people have had to adapt in a big way. I don't think a $300 million or whatever it's at right now asset goes down without a fight, though.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I mean, we used to be more Ethereum oriented, but there's just a lot of really cool stuff happening outside of Ethereum. But Ethereum kind of made our career. So, like, I dropped out of college in 2019 to start like other online marketing businesses. But prior to that, I got introduced to Bitcoin, Ethereum. Like Bitcoin was like $800, Ethereum was like $10 or $20. Litecoin, or maybe ETH was around like 60. Litecoin was like less than $10. I found it. My friend was trading on Bittrex and BitMEX in our college dorm, and I was like, he stopped partying with us, and he just kept being on his computer late at night. I'd come home drunk, and he'd just be like straight grinding on the charts.
An OG trencher,
dude. Yeah, and I had no idea what he was doing. So that was like my initial intro, but I kind of just like put some money in and then lost a lot in the bear market. But I was always interested in it. I was like grinding different jobs to like buy more Bitcoin. But then I found like other online marketing opportunities and did that for like 2 years up until like late 2019. And then I just like paid all my taxes for that company, closed it down. I wasn't really that interested in doing that work anymore. I kind of got burnt out. And then I just full ported ETH. So I full ported ETH and like sold my car, sold everything. And then I kind of just started that's how we started DeFi Slate, which was like our former brand.
Right.
And I called up Robbie, who I met in freshman year also when we were trading. And I was like, dude, we should start like a podcast or an info company. We were originally going to do like a trading signals group type of company because that was kind of like the big thing in 2017 was like the TA traders. Like there was a lot of OG crypto guys that are like OG TA, like altcoin Sherpa and like, like those guys like Trader Main and stuff. but yeah, that's kind of the story. We just wanted to educate people, right? It was like, okay, there's this new asset class, new technology. We should be on the frontier of this. We should learn. Really, it was like Bankless, the Defiant, Blockmates, and then it was us. There was like nobody else really covering Ethereum, covering DeFi at like an actual like video tutorial podcast level. And so there's a lot more competition now. But yeah, that was so ETH kind of like made me in that realm. Like, you know, I bought in at like $80 or $100 with like for me what was size, because I was doing pretty well with this online marketing company. And then of course we ran to like 5K. And so like I'm still very ETH aligned in that sense. Like I really, you know, I still hold ETH, but you know, there's a lot of cool stuff happening outside of ETH.
For sure. And then there's this kind of new category, which is like, you know, ETH aligned in some way, but like external to the ETH ecosystem, where like 2021, 22, it was like the L2s, and now we're seeing like Monad, Barachain, you know, Movement, which are like all ETH aligned, but like to a lesser extent in some way.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's those are where the interesting things are happening. They don't really care about alignment. They just want like users. They want to bring value. They want to build something. And then they've done pretty well. So I think ETH feels that, right? Ethereum's like, I think there's a sense of urgency in the social layer, which is great. Solana, on the other hand, is like kind of going through its first ETH underdog to kind of winning moment, where basically Solana was a massive underdog. FTX crushed them. SBF, they were going down all the way down to $8 last bear market. Everyone was taking their turn at just dunking on them. So they were kind of like where ETH was before DeFi summer. And then they kind of came up and really won this cycle, right? Like in terms of asset performance, in terms of mindshare. And so like Solana's now in its like prime of like we're winning mindshare, we're winning adoption, we're winning on-chain metrics. So they are in a different spot completely in terms of their culture and social layer than Ethereum is. But I anticipate that history will repeat itself and that they will also likely find themselves in a position like Ethereum is today in the future.
Right. Well, it's like, you know, CT and like just the crypto industry in general is so short-term minded, or a lot of it is. So like, you know, people were calling Solana completely dead at $8, which was like, what, a year and a half ago or something, you know? And now Solana's won. And it's like, neither of those things are true.
Yeah.
The dominance doesn't like shift that fast, but, you know, people are so obsessed with price action and they think in a short-term way where, you know, I mean, theoretically, like ETH, you know, this is a good ETH bottom signal. However, like for the last 4 months, people have been calling for an ETH bottom. What do you think are some like catalysts, or if you were to like, you know, suggest that the EF or the ETH ecosystem were to do something about like kind of trying to shift the narrative, what would you suggest? Or do you see any kind of ETH catalysts coming up? Yeah,
so I mean, I put out a tweet that got a lot of hate about this, and so one thing is I think that we got to get rid of like this woke kind of like overly like touchy feely kind of vibe where it's like, you know, it's kind of like this wokeism thing, and I think Amin is really pushing this right now, where it's like, guys, like we need to like Jeet's out, like Chad's in, like we need to kind of restructure the way that like there's like more of a top down leadership model, but Ethereum has to preserve its integrity and immutability as a chain. And so, you know, I think Solana has done a good job of like having more of this like hierarchical, like business oriented sense. So I think Ethereum getting a bit more of that from the foundation level would be helpful. I also think that we need to figure out how to get more flows to ETH the asset. So figuring out how to align L2s with the L1 more. Native rollups are cool. Base rollups are cool. So more technical architecture scaling designs that are basically meant to bring flows to ETH the asset, not to basically allow L2s to kind of make a ton of money and not pay really anything to Ethereum. And look, I'm not really advocating for, like, I put in the tweet, like, tax the L2s, and people kind of got upset about that because it's like, dude, we're not trying to build like a communism or like a fascist system here. Like we're trying to, you know, facilitate open innovation. But I think like the core of that is figuring out how to get value from L2s back to the L1 and back to ETH the asset, I think would be huge. Also institutional. Like I think that there's that etherealize movement ongoing, which is like separate from the EF, but like funded by it. So that is like going and doing institutional business development for ETH the asset. I think is huge. That's a big edge on Bitcoin. Whereas like Bitcoin is not really going to go and do institutional BD because there's no really like
Yeah,
Like,
there's no center of gravity.
this is yeah, exactly. Whereas, like, if we can organize some people to go educate institutions as to why they should allocate to ETH, I think that's like particularly bullish. And yeah, I mean, I think just shipping the roadmap and kind of staying the course there. Also, there's a lot of infrastructure that's built in Ethereum that is kind of people with their own incentives and their own agendas. Whereas I think if there was a bit more collaboration on like the interop level, on like sequencing stuff, on even just like L1 DeFi, I think that like the space could do better in that sense. And then the last one, which has already been happening, which is the Ethereum Foundation has actually been putting ETH into DeFi on L1.
Right.
So that's super cool. And I think that like we should be doing a lot more of that. Like I think L2 should be taking a lot of their sequencer revenue that they make and injecting that liquidity back into their DeFi spaces instead of just holding it in a treasury. Arbitrum's kind of taking that first step there with the recent proposal. So I think using this idle ETH and getting it going and getting like the monetary velocity of the system. So there's a lot of cultural things, there's economic things, there's institutional, and then there's overall just, I think like, number go up, tech is going to help all of this, but like these are the core like facets that I think Ethereum should focus on.
Do you think there's a possibility where it's like ETH as an ecosystem, maintains mindshare, but ETH, the asset, kind of continues to be a little, this kind of like slow bleed where it's like, the network is still functional, right? And a lot of people are building on the network. I mean, look at ETH Denver, right? This conference is still like popping, right? People are still using the EVM, like there's a lot of developer mindshare still. It's not like ETH has fallen off in that way, but ETH price action has been garbage. So like, do you think it's possible that we continue to have this like development and mindshare around ETH, but the asset just doesn't perform well?
No, I think the asset does perform well. So, I mean, it's certainly a possible reality. You can't think in just black and white. So, yes, it's possible, but I think ETH, the asset, does perform well. And I think we get a full revitalization of ETH, the asset, and the community. It may take some time, but we will get institutional flows of size into ETH. And I truly think that, like, the asset's cooked right now, but it's in, like, so there's a guy into the cryptoverse, Benjamin Cohen. He's got a great YouTube channel. You guys should check it out. He has this logarithmic band that he calls like, I think it's like it's like basically just like a buy zone. And he put out videos for the last 8 months calling ETH's going home. And it's this logarithmic band that ETH had such an explosive move in 21 and then again in 23 where it kind of bounced hard, such that it was been like materially above where it should be in terms of its natural growth, if you are a believer of like logarithmic growth of networks. And so it's actually home now. And so like it's at 2200, 2300. So it's like where it should be, or where it could be considered to be a value buy. And so I think that is interesting to me, because like the sentiment is really, really bad. But I actually think that it's a really good spot to be allocating. And I think it does well into the next like 18 months. I think 10K is coming, and I think that everyone who's fudding it is going to be proven wrong. However, that doesn't mean that like if ETH goes to 10K, Bitcoin, Solana, Celestia aren't going to outperform by orders of magnitude, right? So it's like, two things can be true at once. ETH underperforms a lot of the market, but still does well.
One thing that you mentioned a couple names that are associated with this, like this idea of a modular future, and that was a big part of the branding of like the Rollup. I mean, the Rollup, right? It's even the name is related to this. But how did you guys end up at that kind of committing to this like specific niche of the crypto market, being like modularity and this kind of like alignment with the ETH roadmap to some extent?
Yeah, I mean, so I think like we have a thesis at the Rollup that we've held pretty strongly for the last 18 months. That is, we cannot scale all of Web3 in a single state machine. We need to basically go modular. We need to scale horizontally with rollups. If we can scale horizontally, we can have we can basically have abundant throughput. And this is kind of where I think the space is heading. There's still interoperability problems. There's still cross-chain problems. But at the end of the day, our thesis resides in the fact that no single chain will be able to, in the long term, hold all of the world's activity. We believe that the entire world is coming on chain, that we are very early to this, and that we want to position around the teams that share that same philosophy. So Ethereum was kind of like with the rollup-centric roadmap, which actually was inspired by Mustafa from Celestia when he introduced data availability sampling and this idea of scaling horizontally through rollups. Basically, you do this by like offloading execution, which is like effectively doing transactions to off-chain, and then you basically prove that on to the L1 on-chain. And so this is like the core thesis that we've held, is that you can have very highly customized, specialized chains, whether they be single application chains or like full stack verticalized DeFi chains like Unichain, right? We just believe that this trend will accelerate, and we wanted to position at the forefront of this about 2 years ago when we kind of rebranded to the Rollup. That was about like June of 2022 or March of 2022. We saw this, and we saw that it was going to accelerate. And what we didn't realize is that it wasn't just going to be Ethereum, and that there's going to be a lot of other ecosystems that have rollups like Bitcoin and Solana and Celestia. Like, it's not just Ethereum, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are a very much media first brand. Obviously, you've expanded far beyond that, and do a bunch of other activities that we'll get into. However, it seems like there's two types of media brands in this space: the ecosystem aligned ones, right? Like, you can think of Bankless as being like ETH aligned. There's the Solana brands and the Bitcoin brands, and then you have like more kind of neutral, I would say, media platforms, Cointelegraph or Blockworks to some extent, right? Like, why did you take kind of this thesis bet? Like, why do you choose to be an opinionated media company instead of this kind of like completely neutral brand?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are basically innovation aligned is kind of like how we like to think about it. Our core goal with our brand is to be this kind of osmosis device for filtration of high-level technical content into content that people can understand. So we're just naturally curious, Robbie and I. And so the reason why we found this idea of kind of like modularity, scaling in this way, and believed in it is because it just made sense to us. And then when we realized that the narrower our positioning was, the more attention and more authority you can grab and hold on to, that's when we were like, okay, we're going to refine our positioning and we're going to own a part of the space, niche it down. It's going to improve our ad revenue. It's going to improve our consulting business. It's going to improve our mind share. You don't want to be everything to everybody. You want to have a narrow positioning and you want to own that, right? And so that was kind of our thesis in terms of like the business sense. But in the technical sense, it also is just what we believe to be the best way to scale the space for the long term. And so I think the narrow positioning, again, is what I'll kind of harp on, is that has allowed us to have authority over a certain segment. And then we kind of have this now brand that people associate a certain category or a certain idea and thought with, but it's still appealing to Solana people, still appealing to Ethereum people, to Bitcoin people. But we're not like stuck on Ethereum, or we're not like stuck on Celestia or stuck on Solana. It's like we're very much interested in this idea of scaling blockchains horizontally and in this kind of modular fashion. And so where that is occurring, we want to be present. Originally, I thought it was going to be too small, but now I'm realizing there's going to be millions of rollups. We're going to get to 10 million TPS. Celestia is going to have 1 gigabyte blocks. Ethereum's going to scale its DA. Bitcoin has L2s coming. Solana has network extensions. So there's a lot to talk about in this niche, and we felt that having that narrow positioning was going to be the right way to build a kind of really strong community. And the one last thing that I'll add here for all people out there, influencers, media companies, what you don't want to do, again, is try to be everything for everybody, unless you are really trying to be like very news oriented or like that type of brand. If you position around an idea, whether it be founders, whether it be a topic, a niche, a brand, a company, you can always reposition. We're not stuck in modularity. Like, if we wanted to reposition to do like AI, we could still do that. Like, there's nothing stopping us, right? Our audience might be like, what the fuck, right? But like, you can still reposition. And so I think the mistake is not having a position in a stance, and that is gonna, I think, like, the reality is you can always reposition. So
right,
yeah.
Plus, like, alignment has done tremendous things for your brand, because it means that like people who share your views are incredibly friendly to you.
Yes.
Where if you try to take a more neutral approach, you don't have enemies, but you don't have allies either, where it's like, you know, there's a lot of teams that have really wanted to appear on your podcast and you know, be talked about on your media because you're so aligned with kind of their theses.
Their thesis, yes. Being thesis-driven is appealing to people, right? Because it's polarizing, right? Because people won't agree with you. People will and people won't.
Right.
So it's like it attracts the right people closer, and it pushes away perhaps those who maybe are still a good fit for some sort of business, but they don't agree with you. Then it kind of pushes them away.
That's a great point, and I would love to talk more about some of your theses in the space right now. Obviously, we've delved into kind of like modularity right now. You guys do undertake some investing activities, which is, I think, a really cool aspect of your brand. Are there any other theses you guys are positioning for right now?
Yeah, I mean, like the main one is that crypto's going to eat the world, right? Like this is, I mean, I think that we can all agree on this. So we are very bullish right now on stablecoins and RWAs. I think like we have this barbell in the space where it's like gambling, speculative activity, and like very non-speculative activity, stablecoins, RWAs. That's kind of like the product market fit that we have today. And so I think that's been something that we've been investing more into recently. We did a round of like AI infra investing over the last like 6 to 8 months as well. Kind of narrative hopping, but also like I think that we funded some really, really good teams. A lot of it though early on was like infrastructure and applications within the modular stack. And again, the same positioning and thesis-driven media allows us to get those companies that are raising, they want us to invest, or they want us to be advisors or kind of be a part of their idea because again, they're attracted to the thesis that we have. And so that's kind of like our main thesis is like the core idea of modularity. And so that's kind of like our main, like of our 60 or 70 portfolio companies, I would say like half are probably in that realm. And then the rest are like AI, RWA, stables, payments, and other kind of application-based gaming, so like just like smaller bets, kind of in more niche sectors.
So you guys are very broad in kind of like what you're willing to consider.
Yeah, I mean, so we started like basically 2 years ago. It was deep in the bear. It was about like early 23. We were like, the mistake that we're gonna make right now is not picking the wrong company to invest in, but simply not allocating. Because like there were such good deals back then.
Right.
The token would launch sooner. They would hit mainnet sooner. They'd be vesting during the bull market. Everything's great, right? So like the mistake wasn't, oh, did I pick the wrong LRT or did I pick the wrong infra? It was like, no, I didn't buy it because it was 20, 30, $40 million valuation. And obviously we see where some of these companies are trading now. And so that was kind of our thesis. It was like, all right, like maybe not the most DD, maybe not like the most intricate research here, but like let's just allocate and then we'll kind of figure it out as we go. Yeah.
What have been some of your greatest investing successes?
Yeah. I mean, ETH on the liquid side for me was like the best one. Pudgy Penguins has done extremely well for us. We did like the seed round back in end of 22, I think. Teams like EtherFi, Plume, Barachain, Celestia has done well. Other than that, just like Bitcoin, Solana. Some of the recent AI coins did well for us, but that's more on the liquid side. But yeah, Pudgy Penguins was like my big like NFT play and early stage play that did really, really well.
Right. Do you find that like a specific category tends to, like, for example, right? Has VC or, you know, like early stage illiquid investing, has that done better for you? Or has kind of like, you know, chasing the NFT, you know, sector, has that done well for you? Or maybe these like, you know, quick AI booms, like does one sector or the other like tend to do better? Have all your like biggest winners come from one category?
I mean, to be honest, it's finding really early projects that are raising their pre-seed or seed and investing in size there and then letting time play out. That's been like the easiest way to have success, whether people like to hear that or not. Sure, you can size up in the liquid market. Like we did, we bought Hyperliquid on day one, on actually minute one, with size, like $2. And it went up like 35.
Right.
So that was like great, right? That was like a really, really great like 1 month trade. That was like a massive, massive win. We bought in size, pumped like hard. We're still holding a lot of it. We still believe in it. But at the end of the day, like the big gains, like the 100Xs that we've had are like we buy in at like $10, $20 million valuation and the tokens trade in the billions and they hold up during their vesting.
when you think about your brand, you're like Andy, the Twitter yapper. Like
Yeah.
you're very much a personality on Twitter, but you also have this much bigger brand, which I know has, you know, multiple employees, that kind of like backs you up and that you represent. Why did you choose this kind of strategy around brand?
Yeah. Yeah, I think founder-led marketing in crypto is especially important, right? Like people buy from people. And I think in crypto especially, it's very tribalistic. And so you want to have somebody that you associate a brand with and that you grow a online relationship with, if you will. So back in June of 23, I think, so about a little less than 2 years ago, Robbie and I were basically in a very peculiar situation. There was no business income. We were running on bull market profits, which we had enough of, but they were burning out. We had to let go like half of our team in the bear. We had a couple people left that were just barely scraping by. And I was like, all right, Rob, the only way that we're gonna like get out of this and actually like do something and like pull this thing out is I've got to go on my personal brand and just start yapping and just like really get the mind share and attention before like the next bull cycle. Personally, I didn't really want to do it. I remember having calls with Rob being like, man, I don't really want the attention. I don't really want the idea of having to like always be on Twitter or like be a face of a brand. I enjoy being in the shadows. I like my OPSEC. You know, this is like kind of like the crypto ethos. And Robbie kind of embraces that vibe. He doesn't really tweet much, but he's obviously ever present on all of our content. And so when I did that, I think that was the right choice. And now all that I use my personal brand to do is to drive audience and community to our actual business. And so that's my main goal is I want to get to like hundreds of thousands of followers so I can continually use that to drive audience and community to our brand and to grow the Rollup as a company. And so I would recommend most founders of any crypto company or project to do the same, to elect somebody on the team to kind of be this face and to go out and like be that guy or girl, because you get a lot of upside from a personal brand in crypto. And I think like even just being here today, right, is like a perfect example. So personal branding in crypto is very important, and I think it's a must do.
Right. Plus, yeah, you talk about like appearing on a podcast. People are not interested in a particularly brand's podcast in general, right?
Yeah.
They're into a particular founder or they're into a particular person who is like an intern, a yapper within that organization. So I think that's an important marketing note is like you have to invest in personal brand. No one's that interested in the corporate account or the corporate lines.
Yeah.
However, that brings up a question for like a media brand. There's plenty of people who kind of do it as like a human being, as a KOL, as a personality. However, you have decided to put like this media brand behind you, and I guess that's really how you guys started out. Why not just be like Andy? Why have the Rollup behind it?
That's a great question. So like equally such that the brand itself, the Rollup or Decypher, is not good without an Andy or a Jack. The Andy or a Jack is also not good enough in my case without the brand.
Right.
It goes hand in hand. So it's like you separate yourselves and you do the same, right, to other kind of influencers because you have this brand. So companies want to do business with companies. Yes, people buy from people, but like when we have companies, they want to do business with the Rollup. They don't want just another KOL shilling them. They want to be on the podcast. They want to do advertising. They want to do retweets from the Rollup. They want to do content on the Rollup, research. And so like the brand gives me and gives you as well this legitimacy. It gives you like this like, oh, they're actually building something. They're building a business. They're not just building this like you're trying to build a system, a scaling. You're trying to build a machine that is able to churn out content, to churn out opportunities, to be this like research, education hub, whatever it is. And so to me, it's like an equal reflection of your quality of work, such that you have the Rollup and Andy and Decypher and Jack, but you also need the brand to go back to because it gives people something to like tie you to. And then other builders and founders in the space, they really respect that you're building something bigger than yourself. And that I think is really important.
Yeah, that's a huge note. And like the idea that Decypher or the Rollup could be something and could exist without me, you know, I'm much smaller. Our organization is much smaller than yours, but like theoretically someday I could hand it off to a co-host, or we could launch a product line, or we could launch another podcast.
Exactly.
And like the power of that is really big, where we've seen some personal brands scale pretty massively, but I think the biggest brands worldwide are obviously not personal brands.
Yeah, and I mean, what do they say? Like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Like, you need a team.
Mm-hmm.
You need people to help you. And then once you start delegating tasks and work and actually being an entrepreneur for your brand, then you think like magic happens. Like I don't like. It's tough to really hit numbers that we want to hit as a personal brand, and to do the types of consulting and marketing long-term deals that we're doing with projects as our business model. It wouldn't work if it was just a person.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that kind of go far ideology, you guys have been in the game for, like an entire cycle plus at this point. You guys have reached, really, really phenomenal heights. What's like the long-term vision for the Rollup? How can you guys like grow from here, and what are your ambitions?
Yeah, I'm super curious to hear yours as well. But basically, what we've tried to do over the last 5 years is just become a large crypto media company. And I think that we've done that pretty well. I think we're basically a household name in crypto now. We have a strong technical audience. Next step for us is going into the institutions.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had like Securitize, Van Eck. We're getting like Fireblocks. We're getting PayPal. We're getting these types of names on the podcast. I'm moving to New York City in about a month and a half.
Oh, cool.
Getting a studio there, going hard on the institutional flow to expand our audience. So that's our like next step, is to keep doing the crypto content, but go and expand into the institutional audience. That's our next expansion. I anticipate that probably takes us through like the entire year to kind of like really get going. After that, we want to go and then expand towards like mom and pop. And like what we're calling like Henry's, which is like an acronym for basically somebody who's like well off but not rich yet. I don't know like the full acronym, but like going to appeal to people in like their 30s, 40s, 50s who've heard of crypto curious, but don't really know where to get started. We want to then make content that will be appealing to them. Mm-hmm. And so that's a whole another new audience that'll probably be like a 2026 kind of job. By the end of it, we want to have, by like the end of this decade, we want to have millions of subscribers kind of in this more wide business and technology field. So starting with crypto as like our bottom of our current like funnel, we want our top to be like business and tech, and then be able to kind of like go down with like institutional crypto, institutional TradFi, AI stuff, crypto stuff, more like technical infra crypto, investing kind of like thoughts. And so basically our goal is to go from like this very niche brand to like really widen it out, and maybe like one day have like Robinhood Crypto be a sponsor, or like be like have like PayPal be a sponsor, right? And go in more of that like business and tech direction, and then basically be able to. Our goal will be to onboard all of that audience to crypto. So bring our ideologies and bring the teams that we're working with, the teams that we believe in, into their world, and bring these people into our space. And so that's kind of like our main goal. We feel like we've got the crypto space in terms of like the best guests, in terms of like the important audience kind of down packed, or at least like, there's always work to be done. But yeah, our goal is to effectively go and expand our top of funnel massively over the next 5 years.
Right. Yeah. Are there any like creators you admire in the space or try to emulate? Or
like
maybe
Mert.
even outside of crypto?
I like Mert on Twitter.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I like Mert on Twitter. And outside of crypto, obviously like guys like Joe Rogan are great, podcasts like that, Mr. Beast even, like these types of people. What's your plan?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're still really kind of like early into the game. Actually, my first brand was an email newsletter, which was kind of focused on your Henrys, where it's like people who are interested in investing in and have invested perhaps in like TradFi assets, but are crypto curious, and making content that appeals to them, because like, we saw content creators that were like heavy into NFTs and like the LA vape cabal type people, right? And we knew that there was an entire niche around people who were like crypto curious, but were interested in investing in more kind of like thesis-based fundamental assets. So that's actually originally how I started, and then we ended up selling that newsletter, and I saw a space for like more video content and really like investing in high production value, doing stuff in studios, right? Which you guys have been early to that trend as well. So just scaling out the podcast right now, and I've really enjoyed it actually. Now we're doing 2 podcasts a week, so there's a real content grind. But my next kind of objective, and we actually just brought someone on at this conference, kind of locked him in, working with like small teams, like this Alliance DAO, Delphi Labs model, Outlier, like a lot of these these kind of organizations we've seen have allowed small companies and projects to kind of come to market, and the cost of like creating something interesting is lower than ever, with AI tooling. Like Pump Fund, I think, has raised less than $5 million, right? So there's really a large space for like applications and agile small teams to do stuff with smaller amounts of capital. And I mean, we're very small as well, but we have a lot of industry knowledge, and we have access to kind of an interesting public, so we can kind of help bootstrap the growth of those teams, whether it be mindshare or just like thoughts around product, token, whatever. And I find that rewarding as well. So we worked with a couple teams kind of in the background.
Yep.
And now we want to scale that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one big benefit of having a distribution channel, is you have something of value to pretty much every early stage team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've learned. That's why we started that ventures arm, which is like a lot of angel investing, but also a lot of like just advisory for services. The one thing that we've learned, and that Bankless has learned, and that you got to be careful of, is you have to be separate of like the projects that you're talking about that have allocated you equity, and you're going to be very good at disclosing it, and you shouldn't just shill for equity.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that like I think a lot of these like media companies have gone through. So doing some sort of separation of your media with your ventures or your kind of like equity based deals, and then making sure that your deals that you're doing on paper with these teams are not just like giving opportunities for X, Y, and Z on your show or this and that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're gonna want. That's what they all want.
Right.
So you got to kind of like get creative with it. And we've found out kind of like, okay, there's other things that we can do. We can do branding, positioning work. We can do consulting on go-to-market. We can actually just help you get into other media platforms,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like different things that are not just like, you give X, Y, and Z payment in cash or equity, right? We'll do a tweet about you or whatever. So that would be my word of like just like wisdom and caution. And we've kind of learned and separated the two. And now we don't ever do like, give me equity and I'll give you X, Y, and Z promotion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that the crypto space would appreciate. And also just like disclosing, right? Like it's gotten so bad in crypto where anytime I even tweet about a project, I now just put like disclosure, like we invested,
Mm-hmm.
like anything, even just a photo of the founder. Like was on from Anisha and Smokey from Bear this week. I'm like, we invested.
Right.
It's like annoying, but it's like I think it shows good faith.
Right. And interestingly enough, there's been a little bit of drama in 2 areas around you. One in the kind of like we took a strong approach to isolating our content and our venture business, right, with a business there, and then the other one kind of calling out a bigger media brand, Bankless, for not being 100% transparent. You want to talk us through that Bankless drama a little bit?
Yeah, I mean the story there is all kind of on Twitter, but basically there was this AI token launched on DAOs.fun, AI Accelerate, and I had not heard about it, so perhaps I was a little bit salty that I did not get invited. I think anybody who saw what happened would have wanted to be in it.
Right.
Unfortunately, I was not, but looking back, probably for the better. And so basically this token was launched, everybody got in, they could put it in like up to 10 SOL, half a SOL, 2 SOL, different allocation sizes. And Bankless had this guy who was launching it on their show mm-hmm. for many weeks in their AI Rollup, I think is what they call it.
Right.
And they were talking about AI and the sector was hot, but they weren't shilling the token necessarily, shilling this DAO, but by having the founder on and then him launching it, and then you guys are talking about it and whatnot, it's very much like you're promoting this founder at the very least, right? Mm-hmm. And then I come to find out that I'm not even sure that people involved in this knew that it was public, that when they sold, it was attached to their Twitter account. Mm-hmm. And so on day one, the Bankless VC account and the guy who runs it both sold their allocation. And on chain, you could see that they actually tried to snipe the pool on launch to pump it higher. So I just put out a tweet. I was like, hey, at David, what's going on here? Like, what's like, you got this huge allocation, and put out this thread, and basically it blew up. And came to find out that they nuked it on day one, said that they were going to buy back. They did. They made a bunch of money. Twitter wasn't happy. And that was kind of the entire story. But basically, like, it was just a pump and dump of a token that had zero vesting, which was not Bankless's fault. It was the founder's fault.
Right.
Had zero value, really, but was like propped up by interesting market practices on launch by the Bankless team themselves, or whoever was involved there. On the VC side, there's a separation there. And yeah, it wasn't a good look for the space, and it wasn't a good look for them. And to David and Ryan's credit, I don't believe that they advised their VC arm to do this. I don't believe that they maliciously tried to do this. But they did, and it was public on chain. And it was a strategic way for us as the Rollup to kind of position a act of, hey guys, like, you shouldn't be doing this because this isn't right. And it coming from me makes sense. And I just did it.
Right.
And it caused me a headache for like 3 days, some high cortisol levels. Probably won't be doing much calling out again for a while. But I don't stand for that, and I don't think that the space should. And I think they learned from it, and I don't think that they're going to do that again. But I think it was a stain on their reputation. But at the end of the day, I don't think that they're bad intentioned.
Right.
I think they are wanting to help the space, but they've definitely extracted a lot of value from Ethereum, for better or for worse.
Right. Do you think like that we're entering like a new phase in kind of like media content? The crazy thing about crypto is it's like it's all related with price, and everyone wants to hear about assets and the assets they're buying, the assets they're interested in. Everyone wants to hear their bags being shilled. So there's like a fundamental disconnect in alignment, right? People are trying to get paid on the media side, so they promote, and then people want to hear content about the assets they're buying anyways. Yep. So it's like there's this clear link between and an opportunity for like extraction on the part of anyone who has a platform. And we see this in KOLs, media brands, podcasts, whatever, right? YouTube channels, anything. Do you think that there's like an opportunity for a set of more kind of ethical practices in the space, and are we heading that direction? Has the space kind of had an immune system reaction to these kind of like extractors? And I'm not saying anyone in particular is extracting value, but we do see these practices kind of across the space.
Dude, I think the whole Libra Solana crime cycle just accelerated that. We saw cabals acting as if they were hacking Twitter accounts and then bribing celebrities to post contract addresses of meme coins on their account, right? And we saw that at scale. Right. And then we saw these cabals who were doing it starting to collude together to extract more value. And so I think like that was the last straw as far as these types of things happening in the space. And so I think that we see an acceleration towards disclosures, which is already happening. And I think that top brands do it. A more refined way of aligning incentives for working with teams over the long term to be determined how. Also, I think that we probably will get some sort of like trust score based thing, right? Because like the problem right now is that like we used to have the social layer that could enforce credibility because there was only one social layer. It was like crypto Twitter. Right. There was Ethereum. There was like some other ecosystems, but there was like there was like a set of accounts who would enforce the social layer. Now there's like 20 different bubbles. So you scam in one and then you just go to the next, and like there's no social layer accountability right now. And so I think that we will see the rise of like trust scores for certain actors in the space that will be fully democratized at scale. Where as long as you're not trying to just ruin somebody's reputation, there has to be some sort of like credibility of if I'm gonna give Jack a 5-star rating that will reflect on like your Twitter account, right? And you have like a rating on your Twitter account with actual public and anonymous reviews of the business dealings that you do or something, right? I think that there needs to, we need to think through this a bit, but on-chain reputation and on-chain identity is a big enabler, or a big thing that blockchain enables. And so I think that could be really interesting. Outside of that, I just think that like grifters and scammers will basically be ostracized by, in terms of like audience not caring and people not wanting to associate with them. And like the good actors will just constantly be rewarded over the long term. But those are just some ideas that I have. And I just don't think that like crypto is just so ripe for just grifting still that it's, new regulations will also help, whether they're like restrictive or not. But I think having some sort of clarity on what you can and can't do, I think will also help.
Yeah, I think crypto kind of is early in the stage that there's no like standard code of ethics, right? Like you can't shill stocks, right? You can't, you need to disclose, you need to be a registered financial advisor in the TradFi space, but in crypto, like anything goes. So whether that comes from internally or externally, like I think it would eliminate a lot of these kind of like scammy extractive actors in the space, and I think that redirects value in general to kind of more sustainable projects and products, and takes it away from this kind of like crime cycle that just ends up extracting from the crypto space.
Yeah, I had a really good podcast with Kane about it. It is really interesting, this crime cycle. We went from like hating on VC coins to like thinking that meme coins were like this purification, to now realizing that they were even worse. And now we're probably coming back somewhere in the middle.
Right.
We're like ICOs are like Legion and Echo are great for new token launches. So you have these platforms like Echo and Legion, which are bringing back more fair token launches. And then you have like more open information about vesting schedules, about team allocations, and just like all these different practices, I think are coalescing around a more fair and transparent space. So to answer your question broadly, like, yes, I think we are trending in this direction for holding people accountable in the space.
And perhaps like meme coins as a phenomenon ended up being kind of extractive. However, they got a lot of extractive players, some of the like not as great VCs and not long-term investors and KOLs, like they got people paying attention to the fact that there was a lot of insider asymmetrical opportunity information. And like the answer was platforms like Echo, Legion, and kind of more openness around projects and better access, right? Like hyperliquid, community alignment, this fundamental opposition to like the high FDV, low float launches. So,
and I think that also what they also did was show people's hand who's willing to publicly promote and participate in this, and like those are now people that can be seen as perhaps lower ethics and standards than those who objectively either publicly defamed the idea of memes, and then those who support them. There's like a clear like bifurcation of like the social layer, and I think that was also something that happened, right? And not only did it show that there's insider practices, but it also showed which of the KOLs, influencers, media brands, etc., maybe aren't as wealthy as you think they are, aren't making much money as you think that they are, or are willing to do things that others aren't. Yeah.
The last question I want to ask you is like you showed this remarkable capacity for like techno optimism, even throughout bear market conditions, and like a kind of lack of momentum in the space towards like value. You've continued to like double down on projects who are technically innovating, they're long-term aligned, they're working for a future that you have a strong thesis on. Like what has enabled you to be so optimistic in this space, and have these characteristics benefited you?
Yeah, well, so I've been in this space since 2017. Luckily, I've set a financial kind of insulation layer on my lifestyle, which has been super helpful to be able to think long term. So I don't really worry about like rent. I don't worry about like how I'm going to pay for the next 6 months of bills or things. Right, that's been just super helpful. Being just focused on business as well, being focused on education, being focused on understanding that we're in the early stages of this space, and being willing to accept that it's going to take longer than we think. And also just having this strong conviction in this idea, right? Like from the first couple of times that I grasped, like sending crypto to my friends back in 2017 or reading white papers, I've realized that like blockchain is the biggest way that we can, as a group of people, usurp corrupt governments, politicians, corporations, and larger cabals outside of the little ones that we have in the space that operate the world. And so we should never forget that mission. And as long as I'm kicking, I will support that. And crypto's ups and downs can't really fade your long-term conviction and belief into the core ethos as well as into projects that you've invested in. And so once you really grasp the core ethos outside of speculation, it's very hard to ever leave the space.
Excellent. Andy, The Rollup, where can people find you?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter. It's at A with 3 Y's, E Andy, A Andy, at The Rollup CO. Our website is therollup.co. The Rollup on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Shoot me a DM on Twitter. And thanks, Jack.
Excellent. Thanks so much for your time, man.
Cheers, man.